Television is supposed to be rehearsed, polished, and safe. But every so often, reality crashes into fiction with a force that nobody can ignore. Imagine tuning into your favorite show only to realize the tragedy unfolding wasn't scripted, it was real. What happens when the actor never makes it to the next episode? From sitcom sets to gritty dramas, these are the shocking TV scenes forever marked by the death of the people behind them. John Ritter, 8 Simple Rules. Few sitcom dads were as lovable as John Ritter's Paul Hennessy on 8 Simple Rules. Ritter, already beloved from Three's Company, brought warmth, sarcasm, and that unmistakable Ritter charm to the show. But in September 2003, while filming the second season, tragedy struck. Ritter collapsed during rehearsals and was rushed to the hospital. Doctors discovered he had suffered an undiagnosed aortic dissection. Within hours, he was gone at just 54 years old. Production froze. Castmates who had just shared a laugh with him were now forced to grieve on set. The showrunners had an impossible decision: recast or carry on without Paul. They chose to honor Ritter by writing his sudden death directly into the series. The episode Goodbye aired as a heartbreaking tribute, with the characters struggling through the loss of their father, mirroring the real emotions of Ritter's on-screen family. Audiences weren't just watching a sitcom anymore. They were watching real grief, filmed through tears that couldn't be faked. Critics called it one of the most authentic moments in sitcom history. The show itself never fully recovered from Ritter's absence, but fans still look back at those episodes as proof of his impact. It wasn't acting, it was mourning, and it made Ritter's final season unforgettable. Phil Hartman, News Radio. Phil Hartman was the definition of comedy gold. From Saturday Night Live to voice work on The Simpsons, he elevated every project he touched. On News Radio, he played Bill McNeil, a pompous, egotistical anchor who was so absurd you couldn't help but love him. But just after season 4 wrapped in 1998, tragedy derailed everything. Hartman was killed at home, and the show suddenly had to move forward without its brightest star. When season 5 premiered, the absence of Bill McNeil was addressed head-on. Rather than dance around it, the episode simply stated that he had passed away from a heart attack. The tribute that followed was filled with both laughter and raw emotion. Cast members fought to keep it funny because Hartman would have wanted it that way, but the grief was written all over their faces. Fans of News Radio described that episode as one of the strangest TV experiences ever. It was both hilarious and devastating. How do you laugh when you know the real story? Yet somehow it worked. The humor made the sadness hit even harder. The series limped on for one more season, but it was never the same without Hartman. For many viewers, the Bill McNeil tribute wasn't just a goodbye to a character, it was their last laugh shared with Phil himself. Thompson Young, Rizzoli, and Isles. Thompson Young broke out as a teen heartthrob on Disney's The Famous Jet Jackson, but he cemented his adult career playing Detective Barry Frost on TNT's Rizzoli and Isles. Frost was the tech-savvy partner to Angie Harmon's Jane Rizzoli, and fans loved his balance of humor and vulnerability. By 2013, Young had become a cornerstone of the show, appearing in nearly every episode. But during the filming of season 4, Young never showed up to set one morning. Production was immediately halted, and the devastating news spread. The 29-year-old actor had passed away suddenly. Cast and crew were blindsided. Harmon later admitted it was the hardest moment in her career, saying they weren't just losing a character, they were losing family. The writers gave Barry Frost an off-screen death, explaining in the season 5 premiere that he had been killed in a car accident. The funeral scene became one of the most emotional moments in the show's history. Instead of over-the-top drama, the episode leaned into quiet grief and remembrance. Characters reflected on Frost's quirks, his humor, and his loyalty, things the actors themselves clearly felt about Young. Fans still say it's one of the most powerful episodes of Rizzoli and Isles. You can sense the raw emotion bleeding through the screen. Young's sudden death meant Frost's story was cut short, but the tribute ensured he wasn't forgotten. For a show built on solving crimes, this was one case no one ever wanted to close. Nicholas Colasanto, Cheers. On Cheers, every character was iconic, but Coach, played by Nicholas Colasanto, was something special. He was sweet, bumbling, and endlessly loyal, the kind of guy you wished was pouring your beer at the local bar. Colasanto played him with such warmth that fans instantly adored him. But behind the scenes, Colasanto's health was slipping. He battled heart disease throughout filming, and during season 3, he passed away at just 61 years old. The show hadn't yet addressed Coach's fate, and his sudden absence left both the cast and fans devastated. Rather than immediately tackle the loss, Cheers quietly kept Coach off-screen, saying he wasn't around. But in season 4's opening, the truth was delivered. Coach had died. The show didn't give him a dramatic exit, didn't need to. His absence was powerful enough. Woody Harrelson was introduced as Woody Boy to fill the gap, but no one could replace Coach. What makes this moment unforgettable is how authentic it felt. Watching the characters reminisce about Coach felt exactly like the cast missing Colasanto himself. Fans weren't just losing a character. They were grieving an actor who had made them laugh for years. Cheers survived for another decade, but every time the gang gathered at that bar, viewers could feel the empty stool where Coach once sat. Miguel Ferrer, NCIS, Los Angeles. Miguel Ferrer had a voice you couldn't mistake and a screen presence that demanded attention. On NCIS, Los Angeles, he played Assistant Director Owen Granger, a gruff veteran with a sharp wit. Ferrer brought depth to a role that could have been just another boss character. Fans loved his dry humor and tough exterior. But during production of Season 8, Ferrer was fighting a private battle. Diagnosed with throat cancer, he continued working, often visibly weakened. Writers chose to mirror his struggle on screen, hinting that Granger was sick as well. It was a bold move that blurred the line between fiction and reality. In January 2017, Ferrer passed away while the season was still airing. The show responded delicately, writing that Granger left the hospital to spend his final days with loved ones. Later, characters received word that he had died peacefully. It wasn't flashy or melodramatic, it was honest and it was respectful. For fans, it felt less like saying goodbye to a character and more like saying goodbye to Miguel himself. His co-stars called him the backbone of the series, and viewers agreed. Even now, reruns remind fans of his grit, his humor, and his ability to command a scene with a single line. Granger's farewell proved something rare for network TV. Sometimes the quietest exits hit the hardest. And for NCIS, Los Angeles, losing Miguel Ferrer was a wound that never really healed. Cory Monteith, Glee. When Glee exploded in 2009, Cory Monteith's Finn Hudson was the heart of it all. He was the quarterback who dared to sing, and millions of viewers related to his awkward charm. Monteith wasn't just playing a character, he embodied the theme of the show, that you didn't have to fit the mold to matter. But in July 2013, while the cast was on break between seasons 4 and 5, devastating news arrived. Cory Monteith had passed away at just 31 years old. The production was thrown into chaos. Filming was delayed, and castmates openly admitted they weren't sure how they could continue. When Glee returned, the writers made the bold choice not to explain Finn's cause of death. Instead, they delivered The Quarterback, a tribute episode that focused entirely on mourning him. The songs, the tears, and even the silences felt painfully real, because the grief on screen wasn't acted, it was lived. Lea Michele, Monteith's on- and off-screen partner, sang a trembling version of Make You Feel My Love that left fans in pieces. Critics called the episode both heartbreaking and healing, and audiences agreed it was some of the most raw television of the decade. For the rest of the series, Finn Hudson was referenced constantly, a ghostly presence that reminded viewers of what had been lost. Monteith's death didn't just alter a storyline, it changed the DNA of the show forever. Luke Perry, Riverdale. Luke Perry was already a TV legend thanks to Beverly Hills 90210, but when he took on the role of Fred Andrews in Riverdale, he introduced himself to a whole new generation. As Archie's dad, Fred wasn't just the typical father figure. He was kind, grounding, and carried the moral center of the show. Perry's performance gave the wild teen drama something it desperately needed: heart. But in March 2019, tragedy struck. Perry suffered a massive stroke during the filming of Season 3, and passed away days later at the age of 52. The loss rocked both the cast and the millions of viewers who grew up watching him. Rather than quietly writing him out, Riverdale staged an unforgettable tribute in the season 4 premiere. Fred Andrews died while performing a final act of heroism, pushing a stranger out of the way of a speeding car. That stranger was played by Perry's 90210 co-star Shannon Doherty, a casting choice that made the episode even more emotional. The show leaned into reality. The funeral scene wasn't just for Fred Andrews. It was for Luke Perry. Cast members broke down on camera, and you could feel that it wasn't scripted grief, it was raw pain. For fans, it was a chance to say goodbye to a beloved actor one last time. John Spencer, The West Wing. On The West Wing, John Spencer's Leo McGarry was the steady heartbeat of the White House. As President Bartlett's chief of staff, Spencer played him with grit, compassion, and just the right amount of sarcasm. His friendship with Martin Sheen's Bartlett was one of the show's emotional anchors. But during filming of the show's final season in December 2005, Spencer suffered a fatal heart attack. He was 58 years old. The timing was surreal. On screen, Leo was in the middle of a vice presidential campaign, one of the biggest storylines of the season. The writers were left with an impossible challenge. How do you rewrite history when real tragedy strikes mid-story? They chose to mirror reality. In the episode Election Day, Leo also dies of a heart attack. Watching Bartlett learn of Leo's death felt chilling because it was so close to the truth. Cast members, many of whom had worked with Spencer for years, looked genuinely devastated in those scenes. The show handled it with restraint and dignity, making Leo's passing a national moment within the story while also paying tribute to Spencer's legacy. The West Wing was already hailed as one of TV's greatest dramas, but this storyline gave it an extra layer of humanity. Viewers weren't just watching politics, they were watching loss, respect, and love. Christopher Evan Welch, Silicon Valley. HBO's Silicon Valley introduced a cast of quirky tech misfits, but none stood out more than Peter Gregory, the socially awkward venture capitalist played by Christopher Evan Welch. Gregory was brilliant, odd, and often the funniest character in the room without even trying. Welch's performance stole every scene he was in, making him a breakout star of the series. But Welch never got to see the show air. He passed away from cancer in December 2013, just months before Silicon Valley premiered. He had managed to complete filming 5 of the first season's 8 episodes before his health failed. When viewers first met Peter Gregory, Welch was already gone. The show honored him quietly. In a later episode, characters are told Gregory died suddenly while traveling abroad. It wasn't a flashy exit, but it was believable, and it gave fans closure while keeping the show's tone intact. What makes Welch's case unique is how audiences were introduced to a character and mourned him almost simultaneously. By the time people realized how great Peter Gregory was, they were already learning he'd never appear again. It left a bittersweet mark on Silicon Valley. One of its brightest sparks was extinguished before it even got started. Michael Conrad, Hill Street Blues. When Hill Street Blues premiered in 1981, it revolutionized television drama. Gritty, layered, and emotional, it paved the way for shows like The Wire and NYPD Blue. One of its standout characters was Sergeant Phil Esterhaus, played by Michael Conrad. With his gravelly voice and fatherly presence, Esterhaus became legendary for one phrase: "Let's be careful out there." Conrad's performance won him 2 Emmys, but off-screen, he was fighting urethral cancer. By season 4, his health deteriorated rapidly. In November 1983, Conrad passed away at just 58 years old, right in the middle of the show's run. The writers made a bold move. Instead of giving Esterhaus a heroic death in a gunfight or chase, they revealed he died of a heart attack while making love. It was shocking, even darkly humorous, but it stayed true to the show's unpredictable tone. Fans weren't sure whether to laugh or cry, and that's exactly why it worked. The absence of Esterhaus left a hole in the series. The catchphrase that had opened nearly every episode was suddenly gone. For fans, it was like losing a ritual. Yet Conrad's legacy endured. Even decades later, "Let's be careful out there" is remembered as one of TV's greatest sign-offs. tied forever to the actor who made it iconic.